Yo, what is good, everyone? I just realized I got to get a new countdown timer because that countdown timer is kind of corny. Now that I look at it, it's kind of corny. But yo, I appreciate everybody, the over 16K folks who subscribe to the channel, everybody who watch, comment, all y'all. I appreciate y'all. And this is going to be a dope video because we're going to do a few things today. We get to look at a complaint for sexual assault. I mean, hey, that's just the thing. If you're in the music industry right now, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, hey, y'all up, y'all powerful CEOs in the music industry, it's y'all trying to get caught up in anything that y'all may have allegedly had going on in y'all past. So in this video, we're gonna take a dive into the complaint against record boss, record CEO LA Reid. Hey, Diddy kind of Diddy kind of took up the whole news story because Diddy had so much going on, we forgot all about LA Reid. But LA Reid got his own thing. But this is gonna be dope because one, this complaint isn't as long as Diddy's, isn't that as exciting. But we get to compare and contrast a few things. One, we get to look at, hey, when a complaint is a neatly, meticulously detailed drafted complaint versus a complaint that I think is not drafted as well. But we also get to look and compare pros and cons. We know what it was in the allegations against Diddy because we went over it in the channel. If you didn't see that video, I'll link that video above or put it down in the description box. But we had a chance to go over the complaint, the allegations against Diddy. Now we're going to take a look and see what LA Reid got going on, and we can compare and contrast which case is stronger, which case is weaker, which case, hey, if it were me, I would probably settle. I knew the Diddy case was going to end in the settlement. That was literally the last thing I said on the video because it was just too much out there in the ether that would have gave him a headache. So if you're interested, yo, stay tuned. I always got to drop the disclaimer. I am a licensed attorney. I've been in the game for a minute, but none of that amounts to me being your attorney. So this isn't legal or financial advice. This is just me giving my opinion and takes on finance topics, current events, and all that good stuff. It's for infotainment purposes. So if you need professional advice, hey, find a professional in your area. Don't rely on professionals who are lying, and damn sure don't rely on people who aren't professionals who are giving advice as if they as if they are professionals. Hey, and if you're new to the channel, why don't you go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, the bell notification, share this video that it can get out to more people. So let's go ahead and dive into this complaint. I already got it queued up. Boom. We're gonna dive into this complaint. I'm gonna go through and give y'all the truncated version because I think Diddy's complaint was 35 pages. This is 28 pages. We're not gonna go all in on it, but we are gonna touch the areas because we got to look at the arguments, we got to look at the allegations, and we want to compare and contrast this versus what we saw in the case with Diddy versus Cassie. In that case, the facts was just crazy. Wow. So y'all definitely gonna see the difference. Drew Dixon is the plaintiff. Antonio Marquise Reid, LA Reid, is the defendant. Drew Dixon, I'm actually familiar with Drew Dixon and who she is because she's from around the way. She's a DC native. So we definitely about to dive into this case. Complaint. Hey, I always got to give a disclaimer. Right now, the ball is in LA Reid's court because this is just a complaint. He hasn't filed a formal answer as of yet, so we don't know what his versions are, but we're going to talk about it and dive in. Introduction. Drew Dixon is a music producer, entrepreneur, former general manager of John Legend's record label, former Grammy voter, senior A&R executive, and an advisory board member at New York University's Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music. So, hey, she been in the game for a while. Miss Dixon facilitated recording iconic songs such as American Boy, Estelle featuring Kanye West, My Love Is Your Love, Whitney Houston, Maria Maria, Carlos Santana. Like, yo, hey, one of my favorite all-time songs in hip-hop. I'll Be There For You, You're All I Need, Method Man with Mary J. Blige. So, hey, she's a very talented sister. All right, Her career was derailed when not one, but two of her supervisors sexually assaulted her. After the first sexual assault, Miss Dixon showed resilience and used her tenacity and talent to secure another position at Arista. There, Antonio Reid, aware of the first sexual assault at the hands of Russell Simmons, sexually harassed Miss Dixon and refused to allow her to succeed unless she acquiesced to his demands to be alone and in close proximity to her, where he would create the opportunity to sexually assault her on two separate occasions. When Mr. Reid committed these assaults, he did not use a knife or a gun. Such weapons were unnecessary because he held full control of Miss Dixon's career and livelihood in her hands. Despite her well recognized ability, her path to success in an industry where women were expected to yield would vanish if she did not remain compliant and silent. The proof, anytime she rebuffed him, some of the world's most renowned talent paid the price of career stalls. Okay, so hey, that's just a little synopsis. Parties, jurisdiction, plaintiff Drew Dixon, who's domiciled in New York, defendant L.A. Reid, domiciled in California. We're not gonna go too much in that. The amount of controversy exceeds $75,000. That's just the reason they put that $75,000 in there. That's just the minimum threshold that it needs to be in order to meet a requirement for a case to go in federal court. That's why it says, accordingly, subject matter jurisdiction is proper under 28 USC 1332. So essentially, a court can have jurisdiction if the parties are in separate state and the subject at issue or the amount at issue is $75,000 or more. This action, and this is actually important because this deals with the New York State statute, which is where these alleged sexual assaults occurred. This action has been filed timely under New York's recently passed Adult Survivors Act, hereinafter ASA, which beginning on November 24th, 2022, created a 1-year look-back window for the survivors of sexual assault that occurred when they were over the age of 18, allowing them to sue their abusers regardless of when the abuse occurred. Like the Child Victims Act, the ASA is a landmark piece of legislation for survivors of sexual abuse to file claims otherwise barred by the statute of limitation. Ms. Dixon was a leading voice in helping with the passage of the ASA. Now that's interesting because that's the state specific statute to show like, yo, how could she bring this case? This case was kind of old as hell. How could she still bring it? But that new statute gave a look back to allow victims, alleged victims, or purported victims to bring cases even after they normally would have been barred by the statute of limitations. Hey, this is a terrible time of year when sinuses is flaring up because of the change in the weather. So your boy got his little herbal tea. Trying to be about to die. Oh man, that's what I get. God was like, man, just read the damn complaint. Stop being stupid. But yeah, sinus has been bothering me, so I got all my herbal teas and everything going on. All right, sorry about that. I won't waste the people time. All right. The actions described herein constitute sexual offenses by Mr. Reid under New York penal law and were committed against Miss Dixon when she was over the age of 18, for which she suffered physical, psychological, and other significant injuries as a result. Now, we're going to go through the factual allegations. We're going to fast forward a little bit of these factual allegations. And part of the reason is because some of the stuff isn't irrelevant. The first part, subsection A, Drew Dixon, it just outlines who she is and what her background is. So I'm going to just scroll through and touch it. Hey, grew up in Washington, D.C., studied the violin and piano. She had an affinity for music. Miss Dixon became increasingly interested in the roles of album covers, described engineer, mixer, producer, blah, blah, blah. She listened to albums. I thought this was interesting because, I'm a DC guy. But she listened to albums like Vandross, Anita Baker. But if we scroll to the bottom here, Sade, Prince, and local DC go-go artists like Red Essence, Junkyard, and Chuck Brown. Shout out to DC. Shout out to Chocolate City, the DMV area as a whole. Okay. Later on, she went to all-girls school in DC. She ended up attending Stanford University, where she majored in history. But on the weekends, she made her way to Oakland and San Francisco to check out the burgeoning music in the Bay Area. Now this part is important. After Stanford, Miss Dixon worked at an internship at Jive and then in an internship at Warner Brother Records, later a receptionist at Empire Artist Management. She landed her first job as a junior executive at Zumba Music Publishing in New York City, where she signed the now legendary rapper Nas and the hip hop producer Eric Sermon to publishing deals. Yo, her track record is actually amazing. I was looking at some of the artists she signed, and I was like, yo, she did her thing. Miss Dixon first met Reid for the first time in 1993 when she attended the mastering session for the debut album of a band and production team she had heard of on a sampler tape and hoped to sign. The band was Outkast, and the production outfit was Organized Noise. Mr. Reid indicated how impressed he was with Dixon. A young publishing executive in New York was aware of Atlanta's Outkast and Organized Noise. All right, here you go. Miss Dixon was offered a job at Def Jam Recording as director and A&R, and she leapt at the chance. While at Def Jam, Miss Dixon worked with prominent artists like Montel Jordan. This is how we do it. Method Man. Miss Dixon was also inspired by an a cappella interlude um, she heard while typing the credits for Method Man's debut album. She urged her boss, Russell Simmons, to let her explore an idea to transfer the a cappella vocal into a duet with Mary J. Blige. That's crazy if she was responsible for that Method Man Mary J. Blige song, because that's like an iconic ass song in hip hop. So shout out to her, because that was definitely dope. Miss Dixon oversaw every aspect of recording that song that became You're All I Need. She started to convince Puff Daddy. Look at her. Look at her. Speaking of the devil. It's like, no. She started to convince Puff Daddy to secure Mary J. Blige vocals, blah, blah, blah. She worked with RZA from Wu-Tang Clan. They did the recording at the Hit Factory studio, Puffy's Hit Factory studio in New York. Let's see what else. She oversaw production of the show, a soundtrack that had hits from artists like Tupac, Bone Thugs, B.I.G. She had just done as a teenager with her mixtape. Miss Dixon painstakingly sequenced the album and even chose interludes from the film that she intercept throughout. Miss Dixon worked on the show soundtrack, blah, blah, blah. She signed a bunch of dance hall artists. Lauryn Hill, Puff Daddy, the remix of This Is How We Do It. Okay, at the height of her success in 95, okay, at the height of her success in 95, here we get into some of the meat and potatoes. And the soundtrack set at the top of the Billboard R&B charts. Russell Simmons brutally raped Miss Dixon, forcing her abrupt departure from the job she had worked so hard to get. Now I know this is about L.A. Reid, but we got to talk about Russell Simmons briefly. Like Russell Simmons, he been dodging a lot of bullets lately. Like I feel like over the past 5 years, Russell Simmons been dodging a lot of bullets, and he went overseas to like live in Tibet or something like that. Like, hey, I don't know. Like, hey, if you a boss in the record label industry, like it's y'all turn, y'all up it back. So everybody coming for y'all. So Russell Simmons, be prepared. It's funny too, because my family member actually DJs for Russell Simmons, but that's a whole nother story. But music execs, it's y'all turn, okay? After reeling for several months following the assault by Mr. Simmons, Miss Dixon picked herself up and accepted a job as senior director and A&R at Arista Records. A few years later, Arista founder and president, the legendary producer Clive Davis, recognized her talent and promoted her to vice president and A&R at Arista Records. She was officially back. Miss Dixon was prolific at Arista over the course of her career. Hip hop artist signed Q-Tip from a tribe called Quest. Her most significant contribution was Whitney Houston's identify hit songs like My Love Is Your Love, which was given to her by Wyclef from the Fugees for Whitney Houston. Maria Maria, also given to her by Wyclef for Carlos Santana. Lauren, I mean, like, yo, she just worked with the Deborah Cox, Whitney Houston's Heartbreak Hotel. It's Whitney Houston's It's Not Right, but It's Okay. Like, yo, Monica, the boy is mine. God damn, like, yo, she like the hey, shout out to you, Miss Dixon. You was doing your thing in the music industry. Like, we can't deny that, okay? Let's fast forward. She worked closely with the lawyers and business affairs to close artists and producer deals to secure futures from artists on other labels. Okay, this is important too. We're gonna get to the facts, but this background information, it got a little bit of relevance to it, so we definitely got to talk about it. When she initially started at Arista in '96, she signed a 5-year deal to join the A&R department. She reported directly to Clive Davis and worked closely with Arista's general manager and executive vice president Roy Lott. Her working relationship with Mr. Davis and Mr. Lott and the legal team and other executives, the overall staff was professional, mutually respectable. Miss Dixon garnered the admiration of her colleagues at Arista and throughout the industry. Mr. Lott described her as multifaceted, talented, and that she was not only able to advise on albums in her known genre, hip hop, but her opinion was valued on projects in other genres as well. All right. In her role reporting to Mr. Davis, first as senior director and later as vice president A&R, Miss Dixon interacted with Mr. Reid, whose Atlanta-based label LaFace Record was a joint venture with Arista. In all her interactions with Mr. Reid, their rapport was professional, creative, productive, and mutually respectful, just as it has been since their first meeting at the Outcast session in 1993. Mr. Reid often invited Miss Dixon to mastering sessions for his artists so he can get her take on, new music. In all the years that Miss Dixon attended the mastering session with Mr. Reid, and while he was still running LaFace Records, while she was reporting to Mr. Davis, Mr. Reid was professional and respectful. On one occasion, when Miss Dixon sat in for a mastering on the Fan Mail album by LaFace Records, Superstars TLC, Miss Dixon argued strongly in favor of changing the first single to No Scrubs. Hey, she got an ear for music. Shortly before she started reporting to Mr. Reid, he acknowledged Miss Dixon's role in helping him to make the right choice, further bolstering Miss Dixon's confidence that Mr. Reid's interest in working with her was based on his respect for her exceptional ear as an A&R executive and music producer. Upon learning that Mr. Reid would replace Mr. Davis as her boss, so hey, she had this relationship with Clive Davis. She was working with L.A. Reid. He kept it professional because she was at Arista, he was at LaFace Records. They were kind of joint venturing, working together. So, no real employer-employee relationship. Once she found out that L.A. Reid would replace Clive Davis as her boss, she was torn. Sting was highly encouraged by the CEOs of Arista's parent company, BMG, blah, 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 blah. And before the change, Miss Dixon had contemplated starting her own label when her Arista deal had expired at the end of 18 months. If Miss Dixon had joined J Records, she would have had to sign a new 5-year contract. J Records is where Clive Davis went. She was like, she really didn't want to join Clive Davis because, I get that. Sometimes you don't want to ride somebody coattails from multiple organizations because then your works get overshadowed because it looks like their brilliance. You know what I mean? So I understand that, and that makes sense. Her decision was further complicated by a recent cancer diagnosis and surgery to remove one kidney. See, I didn't even read this complaint. So I'm like, oh, she getting all the empathy points right there. So, hey, although her initial decision had been to join J Records, she did not want to make such a long-term commitment, having just confronted her own mortality. So she decided to stay at Arista and report to Mr. Reid for the remaining 18 months of her deal. She had no reason to believe the nature of her relationship with Mr. Reid, dating back to that first Outcast meeting 7 years earlier in 93, would take such an awful turn as soon as her career was in his hands. Thus, when Arista came under Mr. Reid's direction, Miss Dixon declined to go to J Records with her really mentor, Clive Davis. She also turned down an offer to go work for Roy Lott, who had previously offered a job as an executive at Capitol and then later Virgin Records. Okay, she set up an LLC, Possum Records, and laid the groundwork for the next chapter of her career, but it would never come to pass. Of all the things that she did, she had an amazing career. Possum Records, I don't know if that name was it, but that's her background. We're not gonna go through L.A. Reid's background because if you don't know, hey, it's on the screen. Grammy Award-winning record executive, known for signing hit makers, Babyface, uh, LaFace Records, with funding from Clive Davis, blah blah blah. Developing Usher, Tony Braxton, TLC, Pink, Outkast, Avril Lavigne. All right, let's see. We back. All right. Let me check that count out. Uh, yes, Diddy is a smart businessman. I did a video some time back of the top businessmen in hip hop, and I think Diddy maybe been like number 4 or 5. Only reason I couldn't put only reason Diddy wasn't in my top 3 for hip hop entrepreneurs was because Diddy doesn't make other millionaires. Like everybody, if you come up under Diddy, you're gonna be broke fighting for your publishing. Like Dr. Dre made other millionaires. Eminem came up under Dr. Dre. 50 Cent came up under Dr. Dre. You got to give Snoop a little bit under that. Master P, for whatever it's worth, he made other millionaires. He taught people the business game. That's the only reason I didn't put Diddy in the top 3 because Diddy a great businessman, but he don't share the wealth. Allegedly, at least. Allegedly. All right, so now we on the meat and potatoes. Okay, Mr. Reid's first assault on Miss Dixon. Now I want y'all to pay attention to this because this is actually a very interesting point. Now, if y'all tuned in to the video where we went over the complaint for Diddy that Cassie had filed against Diddy, that complaint was interesting, but I will give him credit. It was very well written. I'm gonna go through this complaint. I don't think this complaint is as well written. So I'm gonna go through both of the factual allegations for the first instance and the second instance. We're gonna wrap it up. Then we're gonna do some comparing and contrasting. We're gonna look at why I knew that Diddy was gonna settle that case. Should L.A. Reid settle this case? Do he got a little bit more to fight on? I'm gonna give y'all that compare and contrast so y'all can know how attorneys look at these things just from the facts. Remember, these are just allegations. He haven't filed an answer to this. He has an obligation to file an answer. So, he hasn't filed his answer yet. He shared the wealth with Cassie. Man, that $30 million, I'm sure he gave her exactly what she wanted. Okay. Let's pause for the cause real quick. We're going to jump back into L.A. Reid and his assault allegations. But I'm glad you brought that up, Wolverine. Shout out to my guy Wolverine for being an OG DFD community member. But I see a lot of videos out there that say like, yo, Diddy fumbled the bag. So let's talk about 2 things, okay? First, I personally don't think that Diddy fumbled the bag in any way. Like, sometimes your paper can be so large that your mistakes are almost fumble proof. Not saying, hey, you can't be 100% fumble proof, but when you reach billionaire status, it'll take a lot of litigation to dwindle those assets down. She asked for 30 million. We know that because that was reported by the attorneys and by Diddy's side. He offered her, I don't know, 8 figures. He probably was 10, 15. I guarantee you she got exactly what she wanted. Because, like I said, when we reviewed that case, the discovery would have been too much. It was employers and other employees of Diddy who can testify. She probably had text messages, photos that her parents took of abuse. His alleged abuse went on for 10 years. The longer these things go on, the more of a framework to look at from an investigative standpoint stand in. So, like, if you do something for 1 year, there's a lot less to look at than if you do some shit for 10 years. Let's just keep it on, keep it a buck. That's kind of how it goes. But I don't think everybody talk about Diddy fumbled the bag. This dude is a hip hop billionaire. $30 million is nothing to him. $30 million is 3% of his overall net worth. That would be like if if you had $100,000 and it's not all liquid. He don't got $1 billion in cash, but if she gave her the whole 30 million that she initially asked for, hey, that's a drop in the bucket for him. So I think he's as close as you can be to being fumble proof. Like fumbling the bag, he's damn near fumble proof. And the point number two, 50 Cent came out and made some comments on I think Twitter or something or IG, and he deleted it, of course. But I wanted to talk about that. Like he was like, "Yo, you shouldn't have settled this case." I definitely disagree with that, Curtis Jackson. Like, no, you should have settled this case because when they would have started talking to people, they would have brought Farnsworth Bentley in, floating in on that umbrella like Mary Poppins. That shit would have been a problem. Get this stuff out of the way. Have her sign a seal the settlement so nobody know what nobody know what was given. She can't talk about it. Do all of that stuff because once you start talking to people, all them FOs you was having Diddy, it was gonna be a shit show. So 50 Cent was definitely incorrect in saying he shouldn't have settled it. I think that was his only option. If it went to trial, he would have been it'd have been a shit show. But he was right on one thing. He said any woman or anybody who you ever done wrong during the course of this is probably going to come out now and try to get in your pockets and you essentially open up the floodgates. Hey, I do agree with that. So, hey, Diddy, if you out there, if you got anybody else who you had FOs with or things got crazy with, like, don't be shocked if the litigation start coming out of the woodworks. Like, you could be the next Deshaun Watson. You could be the next Deshaun Watson with 50,000 lawsuits from women just saying you like to have wild FOs and everything. So I wanted to just clear that up before we dove back in. Now let's jump back in on Mr. L.A. Reid. Okay, we're gonna talk about Miss Dixon's first allegation, Mr. Reid's first assault on Miss Dixon. All right, now I'm gonna show y'all why this complaint is not written as well as the complaint that Cassie's counsel wrote. Remember, these are all allegations at this point, so gotta ride with L.A. Reid because it's just allegations. We can put anything in a complaint. I have put anything in a complaint. Trust me. All right. Miss Reid's first assault on Miss Dixon. Sexual exploitation, I said this in the last video, is all about a power imbalance between women and men are pervasive in the culture of hip hop and the music industry. They cited to something. Damn. Let me see what they cited to. A gender equality in music article. Okay, whatever. Mr. Reid has historically leveraged his position as a gatekeeper in an industry that thrives on sexual exploitation of women trying to break into the entertainment and music business. Women in the industry are falsely promised opportunities and advancement by experienced and well-established powerful men in position to derail the careers of women who reject their advances or report sexual assault. Oh man, I could point out these analogies already and these cautionary tales of the do's and don'ts, fellas, but let's get through this, then we'll talk about it. Almost immediately upon his arrival at Arista in 2000, and this was the early 2000s, like 90s and 2000s, like you could really, like, I ain't saying you could get away with stuff, but you could get away with stuff. I think, in my opinion, I think that it was just like it was kind of wide open cesspool for this type of alleged conduct. All right, Mr. Reid began sexualizing and harassing mixed distance from day one off the jump. Before he even officially started working, Mr. Reid and Miss Dixon, Mr. Reid asked Miss Dixon to join him and his new wife, Erica, with whom Miss Dixon had been friendly at various industry events, to look at new apartments for their move from Atlanta to New York. That's kind of weird. Like, hey, come with me and my wife to look at this place because y'all know each other. I don't know. That's weird. Miss Dixon felt it was an odd request. I agree with that, but thought perhaps he was planning to use his home as an extension of the office. So he agreed. He was using his home as an extension of something else. Allegedly. Okay. After Miss Dixon arrived with the realtor to look at the first apartment with the Reids, she realized that Mr. Reid's wife would not be joining at all. During the entire afternoon of showings, Mr. Reid made flirtatious comments. It was so pervasive that it caused the realtor to comment to Miss Dixon privately that he was left with the impression that Mr. Reid was in love with her. In January of 2001, Arista held a company-wide retreat in Puerto Rico. All right, let's pause. Now I'm gonna give y'all a quick lesson in legal writing. Okay, the 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 proper way. Hey, shout out to the Pocket Watcher JT, man. I appreciate you for tuning in, bro. And hey, you got good content. So people who got good content, I'm always gonna support. Especially if you're a brother, man. You know, not that I don't watch the other man too, but y'all know. All right. So I'm gonna break this down, okay? This is the difference between counsel who know how to draft a detailed complaint and counsel who kind of dropped the ball. Let me pull this up because I want y'all to read this and tell me if y'all let me know in the comments if y'all can find what's the mistake in how this was drafted, okay? All right. So we know the scenario. Hey, can you come with me, LA Reid? Hey, come with me and my wife to look at this place where we're gonna move to since we move into this new location. Let's look at paragraph 41. After Mix Dixon arrived with the realtor to look at the first apartment with the Reids, she realized that Mr. Reid's wife would not be joining at all. During the entire afternoon of showings, Mr. Reid made flirtatious comments. It was so pervasive that it caused the realtor to comment to Mix Dixon privately that he was left with the impression that Mr. Reid was in love with her. In January 2001, Arista held a company-wide retreat in Puerto Rico. That is a paragraph 41 is a terrible paragraph to write, in my opinion. Okay. Hey, I'm sort of person who wrote this probably make way more money than me. You know, hey, I'm just, out here trying to educate the people, trying to give y'all, my perspective as an attorney who's been in the game for over a decade. But it says during the entire afternoon of showings, Mr. Reid made flirtatious comments. Then it goes to what the real estate agents say, but it doesn't say what the flirtatious comments was. That is a poorly written paragraph. Sounds a bit Cosby-ish, right? Like, hey man, Cosby out here free of these streets, man. Shout out to his lawyer, man. Shout out to his lawyer, who I think was Diddy lawyers too, if I'm not mistaken. They know how to make some shit go away. But she said the dude was making flirtatious comments. The realtor commented like, yo, these comments, like, this dude's in love with you. But she never describes what the comments were. It's a weird ass transition from he made a bunch of flirtatious comments. Like what? What did he say? Did he say, hey, that thing is thanging? Did he say, like, yeah, like, you got to be specific when you're putting in these complaints because the more details, the better. So, hey, we got to give a notch to Cassie's counsel when they wrote their complaint because they those FOs that they was writing about, they were mad detailed. I could actually like see Diddy in the corner behind the shade of night looking creepy. So that's definitely, I think, where counsel dropped the ball at. They didn't describe what the flirtatious comments was because the comments, depending on what they were, could provide context because there could be some comments. This is the early 2000s. The standard for what's flirtatious as opposed to what's like actually kind of raunchy and inappropriate. I mean, that's a big ass chasm, man. It could be a gray line, it could be no gray line, it could be flirtatious, it could be completely inappropriate. We have no clue what the comment was. So that I think that that was a real good example of how council kind of dropped the ball on that paragraph. Now let's fast forward. January 2021, they had a company-wide retreat in Puerto Rico. Everything was paid for, originated in New York. Karen Quack, the VP and A&R administrator, told Miss Dixon at the last minute not to book her own flight because Mr. Reid, Mr. Reid had invited a group of senior executives to join him on a private plane flying from Teterboro Airport so they could go over all the presentations one last time before sharing new music with the entire company retreat. That makes sense. Hey, when I was in leadership position, I'd be like, hey, if I'm going somewhere, hey, let's powwow. That would make sense. Let's powwow, make sure the game plan is going down. So that kind of makes sense, something that a boss or executive would do. Miss Dixon was confused when she boarded the plane to find Mr. Reid all alone. So allegedly, these are allegations, but allegedly, hey, his modus of operandi, his mode of operation, his patent is like, hey, I'm inviting you somewhere because there's gonna be other people there, but it ain't no other people. It's just me and it's just me, Mr. L.A. Reid, Mr. Executive, your boss, employer-employee relationship, big ass imbalance of power, which you always see in these types of cases. All right. So, all right. She boarded the plane. She was confused when she got on the plane. Mr. Reid was all alone. He began flirting with her right away. Again, he began flirting with her right away. What was he doing? He began flirting with her. What you may take as flirting in the 2000s may not have been flirting. He could have said, oh, hey, that outfit looks really nice on you today. Is that flirting? She could have took that as flirting. He probably was like, yo, I was just saying that. So like you got to put details, even though it's a complaint, you can supplement it later with testimony. But this is real thin and on the flimsy side of the game, in DFD's opinion. She went to the bathroom on the plane and tried to buy time waiting for other executives to arrive. Eventually, she came out of the restroom and discovered she was the only one in the cabin with Mr. Reid. Mr. Reid allegedly is a wild boy. He asked her to sit next to him to go over materials for the presentation. And then he began playing with her hair, kissing her, and digitally penetrated her. They used the word vulva without her consent. Yeah, I know what it was. Hey, L.A. Reid, he was just the only one on the plane. The pilot and the stewardess, the crew probably was in the front, allegedly. So, hey, this is instance number one. Miss Dixon spent the rest of the flight in the daze. Although all executives who were vice presidents and above were entitled to their own room at the hotel, Miss Dixon decided to share a room with her assistants to avoid any possibility that Mr. Reid might try to find another way to be along with her during the retreat. Like, this is where you gotta have the buddy system. Okay, hey, you gotta have the buddy system right now because allegedly he trying to get her alone. So the buddy system is a smart move on her part. All right. So throughout their time in Puerto Rico, Miss Dixon stayed close to her assistant like a damn book bag. Miss Reid stayed close to her assistant so she would not be caught alone with Mr. Reid. At one point, Mr. Reid complained that Miss Dixon and her assistant were attached at the hip, but Miss Dixon stuck with her strategy, which worked while she was in Puerto Rico. Miss Dixon flew back on a commercial flight on the retreat from the retreat. All right, so that's allegation number one. Like I said, this is a little bit thin, not as detailed as what Cassie gave us, talking about the FOs and the male escorts. And let's just keep it a buck. Like, hey, this is more along the lines of a standard employer-employee sexual harassment, sexual assault type of case that you'll likely see. That shit Diddy had going on, that was a little Rick James, cocaine fueled, allegedly things that were just kind of wild. Okay, but this is more in line of what you'll see: employer, employee, imbalance of power, because of I hold your career in the palm of my hand. You have these obligations. All right, let's pivot to the second assault, right? Assault number two. This is the last one. Then we're gonna talk about the viability of this complaint. We're gonna compare and contrast it. I'm gonna give my opinion on how I think this is gonna play out, or what I would advise Mr. L.A. Reid to do if he was under DFD's counsel. Hey, Mr. Reid, if you're watching this, holler at your boy, okay? I can take a sabbatical to get you squared away if you need it. All right. Mr. Reid's Mr. Reid's second assault on Miss Dixon. Once back in NY, Miss Dixon continued to avoid being alone with Mr. Reid. After Miss Dixon learned of Mr. Reid's patterns and characteristics, she used that information to avoid him while still trying to be cordial and do her job. She attempted to dodge his overtures without offending or upsetting him, which is, I'm just be honest, that's impossible. If this is allegations, but if somebody is showing creep behaviors, you avoiding them is definitely going to upset them and offend them. Okay, they aren't stupid. They gonna be like, "Oh, why you trying to avoid your boy?" Now, Miss Dixon's reputation at Arista under Clive Davis was stellar. She only had a few months left in her contract. She knew well the pitfalls of resigning and rebuilding. Miss Dixon tried to just do her job. Although she tried to navigate the treacherous balance between maintaining a working relationship without succumbing to Mr. Reid's sexual advances, Miss Dixon was unsuccessful at keeping Mr. Reid happy. And hey, I don't know if y'all actually, I did a Google search on hey, in these type of cases, I gotta know who the alleged victim, I gotta know what they look like. Hey, Miss Dixon, back in the 2000s, eh, very attractive woman. Very attractive woman. I could see in a climate like that where this particular conduct would likely come up, just knowing how things was back in late 90s, early 2000s, okay? She was unsuccessful at keeping Mr. Reid happy. She was unsuccessful at keeping Mr. Reid happy. What's going on, sis? Appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you tuning in. She was unsuccessful at keeping Mr. Reid happy. Mr. Reid retaliated against her by embarrassing her in front of others and otherwise being curt and unprofessional. Miss Dixon began to plan her escape, but unfortunately, not before Mr. Reid would assault her again. One evening, several months later in 2001, after a work event in New York City, Mr. Reid insisted that Miss Dixon join him for a ride to drop her at home so they can continue to discuss work and could listen to some of the music he had been waiting for her to review, including a demo of a promising young artist, Alice Smith. It was commonplace in the urban music industry to listen to music on car stereo, blah, blah, blah. It gave different sound. Mr. Reid prided himself on his custom state-of-the-art car stereo system. Since this was not a very long ride, Miss Dixon knew that Mr. Reid's driver would be present, and she agreed. Okay, these are allegations, but let me just throw something out there, okay? If some conduct like this is happening to you, ladies, fellas, because hey, it's 2023, this could happen to anybody. It is it is irresponsible to think that, well, the driver will be there, so and it's a short ride. So since the driver's there, there's nothing that can happen. Those drivers and security guards, they know where all the bones are at, okay? Like that's the first person I'm pulling into a deposition to ask questions because hey, it goes down in the limos. Okay, so I think that was definitely a bad move on her part, just saying like, okay, the driver going to be there and it's not that far, so let me go. Like, I get it, this is your boss, but that logic didn't make any sense because the drivers work for him, and anybody who worked for him, hey, we know where those loyalties lie. That loyalties lie with the people who making sure that you bringing home the bacon and keeping the roof over your head. Okay. All right. So his driver was present. She agreed. She also knew that if she continued to avoid Mr. Reid, now this is the real reason, allegedly, why she went. She knew if she continued to avoid Mr. Reid, she would never be able to get anything approved for her artist. She assumed it would be safe to accept the ride and continue their conversation with the driver present. She was wrong. Shortly into the ride, Mr. Reid, again without Miss Dixon's permission, began to grope and kiss Miss Dixon, who squirmed and pushed him away. As Mr. Reed's driver stared straight ahead, he keeping his eyes on the road. He could be hearing all kinds of shit back there. He just gonna be like driving Miss Daisy. I ain't see nothing, boss. Allegations, though. Allegations. We always got to say that. We don't want to get no. Now I want y'all coming for DFD because it ain't going to work out well for y'all because I know what I'm doing. All right. When Mr. Reid complained and became visibly irritated with her lack of compliance, Miss Dixon froze. Mr. Reid again digitally penetrated Miss Dixon. Once the car stopped in front of her residence, Miss Dixon jumped out of her car while taking care not to anger Mr. Reid because by this time she felt trapped. As soon as she was alone in her building, she cried. After this assault, Miss Dixon intensified her efforts to avoid Mr. Reid. She knew that repercussions at the time of saying that she was the victim of an assault at the hands of another mogul would be career ending. They would blame, the blame would lie at her feet. Now, remember in the beginning, before we even got down to what's going on with L.A. Reid, she said that she was sexually assaulted. She used the R word by Russell Simmons. And hey, Russell Simmons got a lot of allegations out there. So she like, yo, I got another claim with another African-American boss. That might look a little shady. Nobody gonna want me around. Like everywhere she go, she throwing these allegations at guys. That's how she thought that it was gonna look. Which, I'll be honest, that's a fair assumption. You know what I mean? I think that's a fair assumption for her to have. She only told her life coach. Again, I think this is really weird. She only told her life coach. Miss Dixon began seeking a life coach a few years into her career at Arista while she was still working for Clive Davis. Dixon continued to meet with her life coach on a weekly basis. Through the end of her tenure with Reid, Miss Dixon only told about the assault and the harassment. Okay. Ongoing harassment and career sabotage. Now, we don't even got to go on this session. I'm going to give y'all the Reader's Digest. That's an old ass reference. But I'm going to give y'all the truncated version of what was going on. Miss Dixon got all these artists that she want to sign. She need the bosses to hear of. And of course, she's alleging that Reid was like, you know what? Hey, if you're not going to let me get the yams, allegedly, if you're not going to let me get the yams, you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to listen to any of your artists. I'm not signing anybody. I'm not doing anything. So, yo, peep out the people who she brought in front of him to listen to, who he allegedly, well, it's not even alleged. I mean, I'm sure this could be factual, who he didn't listen to. He didn't listen to some big names because of this. Let me pull down so we could. All right. John Legend, before he went by John Legend. So he brought John Legend there. Hold on. There was another big name of a big time artist. All right. A few months later. Okay, here it is. When Miss Dixon and another colleague in the A&R department brought Kanye West in the audition, Mr. Reid passed on the rapper and then berated Miss Dixon in front of the whole A&R department about how bad she was at her job and a waste of time that the audition had been, all while Kanye waited in the lobby. This dude had a chance to have Kanye West under his umbrella and make, if Kanye was worth $1 billion, the labels that he was with made probably 3, 4, 5 billion on all of this stuff. He had a chance to have Kanye West under his umbrella, but never even sat down for the meeting, heard what the dude could do, all because allegedly he was salty because he didn't get any yams. That's wild. Kanye, I wanted y'all to specifically hear the Kanye West thing because that's crazy. So passed on Kanye West. A few months later, she brought in a demo for John Legend, then John Stevens, and before he was an Emmy winner, a Grammy winner, she blew off the demo. Mr. Reid invited her to watch John Legend perform. He agreed to come. The last minute, Miss Dixon told Mr. Reid she would meet him there. Mr. Reid was a no-show, so Miss Dixon sat at the table near the stage while John performed with an empty chair beside her. So she couldn't get nowhere. Essentially, Again, Miss Dixon avoided Mr. Reed, so on the day of John's audition, Miss Reed canceled the entire and told the entire senior staff not to go. Long-term impact. Well, think about it. Her career was stalled. Okay, I'm giving y'all the easy version. Her career was stalled. Because her career was stalled, she's like, you know what? I'm getting the hell up out of here. She left Arista, pursued an MBA at Harvard Business School, resonated to the fact that she would not ever be able to function in the music industry without being sexualized. Uh, Graduated with honors, long-term impact. She joined John Legend as general manager of Homeschool Records. There she worked with John to co-produce Estelle's album. Like, yo, she also suggested Kanye West as a feature of American Boy. So, yo, she did some outstanding work in light of which she's a legend here. Now, it says here, going public. Mix Dixon began to tell her story in 2017. She felt liberated. 2017, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was the height of the Me Too movement. So I think this that was when I think that was when, hey, Dimitri, what's going on, brother? I appreciate you tuning in. I feel like 2017 was kind of at that peak of the Me Too movement. So, she said she was feeling liberated. 2017 was a year of reckoning for sexual abusers and harassers. See, I didn't read the whole thing, so I'm reading it now. Whose power and wealth had been previously shielded from accountability. The Me Too movement had exploded in a global phenomenon. So in May of 17, Sony Epic Record parted ways with Mr. Reed after an assistant at Epic accused him of sexual assault. Okay, so she's saying this happened in the early 2000s, 2017, allegedly. 2017, Mr. Reed was let go because of assistant said, yo, yeah, he had some sexual misconduct going on. In November 2017, Russell Simmons and filmmaker Brett Ratner were accused of teaming up to engage in sexual misconduct. Now she's just calling out Brett Ratner. I was like, damn, what I had to do with this? She just I'll throw Brett Ratner in there too. But Russell Simmons, she got him earlier in November 2017. Screenwriter. All right. So she's just going through naming all of the people who were being put and called to the front of the tribunal, to the courthouse, to be judged on the Me Too side of the game. All right, let's see. Scroll down. All right, on 2000 in December 2017, the New York Times published an article on Mr. Simmons. In an article, Miss Dixon told her account of how Mr. Simmons had sexually harassed her. The article also briefly mentioned that Mr. Reed had harassed Miss Dixon, although she revealed the assault in the car. The reporter at the New York Times, she had never publicly discussed Mr. Reed's assault of her. I think that has some weight. So those are the allegations. All right. Now that we got the allegations out of the way, let's kind of talk about it. Okay. Now we got two complaints that we looked at over the past days. Like it's prime time for it's the peak of the hunting season for record execs who may have allegedly done bad things. That shit is all coming to the forefront now. But we got this complaint by Cassie that we looked at. It was very detailed, very meticulous, very broken down very well. It was a very well written complaint. We got this complaint. All right. The allegations are terrible allegations, but nowhere near as crazy as what we read in the allegations against, P. Diddy, Sean Combs. Okay. Allegations are terrible nonetheless. But when we just look at the documents on their face, this document is not very well written, in my opinion, because they talk about some of the gestures that Mr. Reed did, some of the flirtatious things he did, but they never actually describe what those things were. Now, when we're looking at these two, the title of the video is, yo, should L.A. Reid settle this and move this out the way? Let's see. We got to compare and contrast. The discovery in Diddy's case would have been an utter shit show, and there would have been no coming back from that. Once you get people on the stand, once people have the pressure and the obligation to tell the truth, and if it's proven, because trust me, I've cross-examined people all the time, and caught them in lies. I mean, I've had cases where I represented a person who was charged with rape, and on the stand, I got the victim to just testify that it was a lie. It's not difficult for a skilled attorney to catch someone in a lie. Once people, everybody think they can tell a story when they're on the stand until you put that hot ass strobe light on them, and it's being recorded at a deposition, or you're in front of a jury and people sitting there looking at you. They can see all your mannerisms, your physical cues that give off an impression of truthfulness, nervousness. Are you trying to finesse or fabricate something? The discovery in Diddy's case would have been an utter shit show. There was no way of coming back from that. His staff was too big. The people who had the potential to see what was alleged was too big. The time frame that the kind of 10 years of alleged abuse and misconduct, it's too many witnesses to come out. No, settle that shit and move out the way. Move on to the next one. Settle it, make it go away. Try to win a Grammy because your album's slapping right now out here in these streets. 100% did the right thing. Now let's look at this case, okay? There's a few things in this case that I think are more problematic and make this case a little less likely to be settled in 48 hours for sure. It may get settled, but it damn sure ain't gonna get settled by the time this 30 minutes after I do this video, hopefully. I'm like, damn, I gotta do another video. But some of the things that are gonna be problematic, the lack of detail that's provided in the complaint about his conduct that was flirtatious or that crossed the line into being inappropriate. That's number one. Number two, when we look at the Cassie complaint, there were instances of abuse where she had bruises. She went to her parents' house. Her parents saw the bruises. They took pictures of the bruises. They probably still got them damn big pictures. But there was some, and I said this in that video, the truthfulness of a person's story is heightened when they tell someone in close proximity to the events occurring. Not saying that if you tell someone a year later it's false, but the perception is if something bad happens and I tell someone right away, the likelihood that that's going to be true is heightened because the immediacy of the event. The event happened when you saw me, I was crying and bawling and snotting up and snot bubbles. Now, she mentioned that she told her life coach, but they really didn't explain or describe. I mean, one, I thought it was weird to tell your life coach, like your best friend, maybe your therapist. Confused. Correct me if I'm wrong. A life coach and a therapist are two different things. So it was kind of weird to tell the life coach, but they didn't articulate when the life coach was actually told in proportion to when the actual allegation happened. If she told her life coach, yo, I had to meet with my life coach the next day and told her, hey, that's going to be more elevated. The veracity or truthfulness of that statement is going to be higher. If she told her life coach 6 months after it happened, like the veracity of that statement in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of how a trier of fact, a juror is going to look at it, are going to be decreased. The other thing is, because this instance with L.A. Reid is more of a traditional employer-employee relationship, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to find the amount of witnesses who can verify that these events actually happened. All the instances that she identified with L.A. Reid, in my opinion, I'm just looking at this is a complaint. We don't know what his answer is, but just how she wrote the complaint. All for her allegations, he was really meticulous to ensure that any conduct he was doing that was wrong, inappropriate, criminal was done when he was in an isolated environment. The first one, he was on a damn jet and it's just him and her. I guarantee you the staff probably got their own goddamn compartment. So if like there's probably no eyes that actually saw that event occur. The damn pilot and the co-pilot probably up front. And let's just be honest. Think about this. If you a balling ass record label CEO and you can afford a private jet, I'm just saying, I'm not saying he did this. I'm just using a little common sense here. If you know you about to do something ill, you don't think they're gonna be like, yeah. If I'm a balling ass dude and I got a private jet and my wife get on the plane and I want to get some yams, hey, we going to the Mile High Club. What do you think I'm gonna tell my staff? I'm gonna be like, hey, flight crew, y'all stay up here because I don't want to be bothered. I'm back here relaxing. I'm back here working. Don't bother me. So he was really meticulous, according to her, what she put in the complaint, to not have situations where if he's actually doing this stuff, there are people around who can testify. Diddy had male prostitutes and all sorts of people. His butler, his cook was probably bringing out cupcakes and doing the event and recording it, and the footage probably still out there that you can snatch off of a goddamn out of the cloud or something somewhere. Like he was real meticulous, according to her, to have these very isolated incidents. So there's probably going to be no third party witnesses to what happened on the plane. When you're talking about in the car, same assault happened in the car, allegedly. The only person in the car was the driver. This is the early 2000s. It's not like they were in a Tesla and everything was recorded. Even if it was recorded, getting in that information would probably be problematic and have some hurdles to get over. But her, according to her own allegations, every situation that LA Reid is in is a situation that in a courtroom is going to be his word versus her word, his word versus her word. And that's going to be interesting because let's just think about it. If she would have complained initially when these things happen, you complain initially when these things happen, they could actually have done forensic tests to like, hey, when people do the things that L.A. Reid is accused of doing, you know what it leaves? It leaves evidence there. It leaves evidence there. All these things they could have found, but we're talking 23 years later. This stuff happened in 2000s, the early 2000s, and this 2023 is going to be she is saying this, he's saying this. Now, what is probably going to go into her favor is if they can find other people who were a victim of this similar conduct. Said in 2017, an assistant said that he was fired because an assistant said, oh, he sexually assaulted her and had similar allegations. If they can find other people who have those type of stories, that's definitely going to bolster her case. But the facts, just solely looking at the complaint in this case, is nowhere near as juicy and as factually sound just on the face. Uh, well, just on the face. I definitely agree, Ivy. L.A. Reid has done this before. L.A. Reid is probably a little bit smarter. L.A. Reid didn't think he was Rick James. You know what I mean? Diddy was out here acting like he was Rick James or something, and like he was just he was a straight dictator and he could do whatever he want. L.A. Reid is more of, like I said, what we will see. I would be shocked, it probably settled, but a case like this, with just what we see from this complaint, they'll probably go well into the discovery phase. They'll probably start bringing people in because I'm gonna be honest, like, who are you gonna call to the stand? Like, I hate, if the allegations actually happen, it's sad, but all the situations you was one on one, you L.A. Reid, who you gonna call to the stand? The driver? Is the driver anywhere to be found? That dude probably is he still even alive? If he isn't alive, is he a witness who we can actually find? Can we actually issue him a subpoena to get him to at a deposition to give us what happened? Is he going to remember what happened? Was it some payola done? Because I guarantee you, if you're the driver for Diddy, I guarantee you Diddy is paying you handsomely. If you're a driver for L.A. Reid, I guarantee you they paying you handsomely to drive and shut the hell up and not see anything unless it's something I tell you need to see. So it's just going to be rough. You're going to have a pilot, but the pilot got his damn eyes on the sky. He likes Stevie Wonder. So I think this case is probably definitely not going to end after this video airs. Okay, I know that for a fact. I think they'll probably actually go through discovery because if I'm the attorneys in this case, like the biggest hurdle that I see is them bringing out other victims who were subject of similar behavior. That's gonna be the biggest issue. But you got to think about it. When if you're trying to get a job at a record label and you're victim, the young lady in 2017, not Miss Dixon, you're the young lady in 2017. LA Reid was fired, peak of the Me Too movement. Yo, it might be some people are real hesitant to go up there. Like people like, man, I don't want to go up there and put this record exact. People think really wild. You know what I mean? People's self interest and self preservation is a lot of times greater than them trying to help you win your goddamn case. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go up here and testify against LA Reid, who's a powerful person, and maybe put myself in a position where another executive may be like, oh, that's the testifying girl. Even though, yo, testifying, if it did happen, is the right thing to do. But this is how people think. So I think it's going to be big time problematic for Miss Dixon. I just don't see it'll probably end in a settlement, but it's not going to be a juicy settlement. It's going to be one of those, okay, we went through discovery. You don't got any real witnesses. You don't got any real forensic evidence like you don't got no forensic evidence like what is it, a Lewinsky dress or anything like that. And in light of that, we're gonna settle this. So yo, go away. Let's get on to making music. And that's probably going to be the likely outcome in my opinion. But yo, it's a big takeaway, especially for the fellas. I can only speak for the fellas. I'm sure ladies, it may work the same. But I can tell y'all a personal story of me climbing the corporate ladder before we get out of here. Okay. The moral that we can take from these is you do not eat and shit in the same location. Okay. I don't care if you, as someone who actually met his wife during our employment, that's very rare. Most times, relationships, and like, I don't care how fine someone is, if they work with you, that shit is off limits. Do not touch it. Don't go near it. Keep your food and your fecal matter in separate places. Don't let your privates mess up your wallet, is what my father always taught me. And let me give y'all a story of how things work in corporate America, right? This was it was maybe 2016, 2017. So it might have actually been when the Me Too movement was booming, right? So I'm a young guy in corporate America and I ascended the corporate ladder fast. I ascended the corporate ladder so fast where a lot of people who were at the organization were salty because, old school way of thinking is, new school way of thinking is the best person for the job get the job. Old school way of thinking is I've been here so long, it's my turn, even if I may not know what the hell I'm doing. So people like that were kind of salty because the new young guy came in and superseded everybody, right? Now, I look like this, but I'm really not that stupid, okay? I'm very tactical and smart. So here was the story, okay? I know this is the height of the Me Too movement. And I can remember once we were reading for like kids on Dr. Seuss, racist Dr. Seuss birthday. But like I'm going to the neighborhood, school down the street from the crib. And I remember we took a photo. I was the only guy who volunteered. And I didn't even want to put my arms out because the tall person in the middle and you put your arms out so everybody could get in the picture. The Me Too movement was so strong. When we took that picture, I stood in the middle like this with my arms closed, and I just let all the women stand beside me. And everybody was like, "That picture looked awkward as hell." I was like, "Nope, y'all not gonna get me. I ain't touching nobody. If a woman come in my office to talk, I'm leaving the door open." But these are the extremes you had to go to. So this was the scenario, right? Young guy, I just superseded a bunch of people to end up being the boss at this particular organization, right? Now, when you're in corporate America, it gets kind of cutthroat. So you'll have people lodge bullshit, anonymous complaints out there, just throw them out there to see where they stick. But your boy is pretty observant. So I am a really good, I can evaluate a person's character, like, hey, I could spot a snake or a shyster. Hey, I'm from the land where a lot of people shady. So so I could spot someone who's shady, right? So I had a supervisor who was a female supervisor, right? Now we go to this conference. Now, at this conference, it's my job to look and evaluate talent. So we were in another state at this conference, and the people who work for a similar organization, they host the conference because they're the host state. So this young high speed attorney, she probably maybe was a few years younger than me, but she was kind of showing everybody around. Now think about it. She was a young African American attorney at the host state. When we show up, the delegation where I'm from is all black people, like 90% black people. My office was, hey, I had a very diverse office, a lot of minorities in my office, which was definitely not the norm in the industry that they were in. So immediately you're going to look and say, like, man, who's this organization coming in with all these black people? But all these black people, we had some black people drama too, but that's neither here nor there. So, she was really inquiring about our organization. So as she was, showing us around the town, we were talking like, and I know, hey, we big time city folks. We could pay a lot more than wherever y'all was making in this little southern state where you're from, right? So when we get a vacancy for an attorney, this attorney wants to apply, right? I'm like, just apply. Don't talk to me about it. But I go specifically to this female manager that I have, right? And I say, yo, the attorney that we met down at this conference was inquiring about working here. What do you think about her, right? Because one, if you're my manager, I should be able to go to you. If you were my team, I should be able to go to you and get your evaluation of people. This is what she said, right? One, I already knew how to proceed because I had to look at this person because this person was one of them people where you got to keep the grass cut so you can see where the snakes was at. But when I said, what do you think of that attorney that we met at the conference? The very first thing, the second thing, it's like, I think she's very sharp, but I think she like you. And I was like, what? I was like, okay, that's wild. And so, I thought, that's kind of crazy, but I don't know. What I realized early on is, boy, women in professional environments are real snippy. And so when she said that, I was like, okay, I know how I have to proceed because I have to protect myself in the event that any BS comes up. So what did I do? The applications came in. I completely removed myself from the process. I don't want to look at the people who applied. I don't want to sit on the panel to be in the interview room when the interviews are done. Hey, manager 1, 2, 3, you all look at all the applicants and the people who you think are the best applicants. You bring them in for an interview. I formulate the questions. We work together, formulate the questions, the evaluation criteria. Y'all ask all of that stuff. Come back and report to me with just the scores, and whoever got the highest score wins. I completely remove myself from the process. And I normally don't like to do that. I normally like to, if we're going to extend an offer to somebody, I normally like to meet that person. But I said, nope, I know what I'm working with here. That response that one female manager gave me cause to pause. The radars went off in DFD's head. So I was like, you know what? I'm removing myself from the process. After interviews, 3 people had the highest score. Who do you think had the highest score? Of course, the attorney who we met out of state at the conference because she worked at the organization. Then there was 2 other candidates who were completely outside new candidates. Clearly, someone who works in a similar organization should score the highest score because they know how the organization works. So we had those top 3 people. I said, you know what? I'm getting the person with the highest score. I don't give a damn who it is. The person with the highest score happened to be the young attorney who we met, who was clearly, if she was fugly, nobody would have cared, right? So she was clearly a nice looking woman. Because if she was fugly, nobody would have cared, right? It would have been an issue. So we bring her on. Everything is going smooth. What do y'all think happened with DFD? DFD tried to stay above board. What do y'all think happened? There was a random anonymous complaint about your boy saying that, hey, it was some unauthorized hiring shenanigans going on. Your boy it was a whole big, they came and told me, was like, yo, this is what's going on. It was anonymous. It wasn't anonymous. When you sitting at certain levels, things can't be anonymous. People know you can slide something under somebody's door, but it's cameras. We all know how it got there. I knew how this complaint got there beforehand, but I wasn't tripping because I was like, hey, y'all do what y'all need to do. I already knew what was coming because I'm very observant and I know how it goes. People stab you in your esophagus to try to get a leg up. So I saw it going, but solely because of a random anonymous complaint, about some hiring misconduct or what they perceived the relationship was between me and this new attorney. It was a whole investigation that was done. Your boy know how investigations go. Again, there was a finding of absolutely nothing that went on, but it was utterly ridiculous that I even had to go through this process. But the moral of that story is, yo, you got to tread lightly in this environment because all it takes is an allegation of something. And hey, I'm not saying, hey, what LA Reid did and Diddy did, that shit probably true. But allegedly, it's probably true, allegedly. But I'm just saying, fellas, as a matter of course, you never, anybody, it's generally a bad rule to eat and use the restroom in the same place because you're going to end up getting sick. You're going to end up getting salmonella or something. But, hey, somebody tried to finesse DFD with just a random complaint, and I had to go through a whole 2 or 3 month investigation just to find out that nothing happened. But luckily, I was blessed to have the foresight to know that these people are some fools, and I already know what they're going to try to do. So let me remove myself from the process. Had I just sat on that panel and said, "Oh, this is the person," and scored that person high, they probably would have been like, "Yo, you did something wrong." But that's kind of how it go. Yo, celebrities are doing wild things allegedly. As for this case, not as crazy as Diddy's. I don't think he's going to be inclined to want to settle it. He has a little bit more just off the complaint. I think the facts are a little bit more favorable to LA Reid, even though it looks like he may have a history of trying to do this. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments about this guy. But like we said, LA Reid has done this before. Diddy was wild. It is what it is. That's all for this video. If you like this video, you're interested in finance content and returning. I'm getting tired. You're interested in attorney reactions. Check out the content that's going to be on the screen. There's going to be more content that you would probably enjoy. Hey, community, I appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Y'all take care. Peace.